Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are. I hope you're having a fantastic day. It's SoulSaint here, and we finally got ourselves through the CBC. If you're at the time of this recording, we're pretty much on the tail end of it. And if you haven't already claimed him, now's a great time to get him. It's EMIC. EMIC is in play, and what does he bring to the table? Well, one of the things I wanted to show is a slightly elevated version compared to just him being a solo, unkillable. There are some routes, so there's various different ways to utilize him, and one of the ways I wanted to incorporate him was within a composition that can basically try to push towards the higher scope of in-game, or I wouldn't say in-game, but at least top-end damage for clan boss, right? So being able to go at higher speed ratios, incorporating unkillable or block damage for that matter, we're going to use both, and basically tune a team up utilizing EMIC to enable a strong composition to get us closer to that 1 key territory. Now, I want to give a salute out to Honeycomb if you're listening and watching on this video. Big salute to him for allowing me to work on his account. He took a takeover service, which you guys can get enabled on. If you want to take a look and see if get some work done, on your own account through the way that I do things, feel free to look in the description below. We're gonna have a link for takeover, exclamation takeover. With that being said, today's composition is going to be based off of EMIC and Helicath. It's going to be a variation of what's known as the Batman Forever comp, but it's going to incorporate EMIC inside of it. And basically what we're going to try to encompass is that we're going to offset our unkillable champions so that one is doing an unkillable towards the end of the turn where the CB or the clan boss Demon Lord is going to take his turn, so you're unkillable there, and then the other unkillable, the alternative block damage champion is going to be doing it on the other side, which is going to be the next turn, and they're just going to basically cascade upon each other with every other turn they're going to do. They're unkillable, right? At the end of it all, these speeds are basically intertwined to go at a ratio or a rate that's going to enable a 2-1 ratio. So basically every single time the boss gets a turn, we're going we're going to do 2 turns before the boss does his turn every single time, right? And that's the goal of it. With that being said, we'll do a breakdown on the skills and the masteries that we got going on. I would like to note that this is an account that is based off of a mid-game range level. If you haven't seen about defining your progress and where you're at, you can take a look at that video to kind of understand what I mean by where he's at at this point in time in the game. But with that being said, let's talk about the speeds and where we have their damage output at. We're going to show you the run, as well as shortly after that, we'll talk about different ways we can improve his gear, okay? With that being said, let's jump into it. So Helicath is a champion that's going to be going at 246. Now, mind you, this range right here is not accurate because we're doing it. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any keys, so I have to kind of look over here in the stage department aspect for IT, but just assume that because of his area bonuses in the Demon Lord section, he has +2 to everybody in speed. So just add 2 to this calculation. So he's going to be going at 246 speed. We did this with the intent because he is looking to maybe get inside Iron Twins Fortress down the road, and 246 speed is actually valuable for some compositions that can enable Helicath, as well as maybe a complementary Warcaster or some other block damage champion on a 4-turn cooldown, with Kurzat. Maybe we can build it up and show you guys that in a video, but basically it opens the door for you to get more value out of just one Helicath, which he only has, right? So 246 speed is the range that we were aiming for, and then with that being said, we also try to get him within a decent accuracy. 250 is the minimum you're looking for Ultra Nightmare Clan Boss, and then after that, it's a healthy spread as much as we could, and crit damage, and then defense, right? Since he's a defensive-based champion. So we're basically pumping as much damage as we can to him while maintaining that speed and maintaining the accuracy requirements that we're looking for. Big value out of his A1, which is weakened, right? Doom Priest is going to be the next one that we're going to talk about. Is going to go at 220 speed, right? 100% crit rate. She doesn't need accuracy since she doesn't put any debuffs in play. And then a healthy spread of her primary stat, which, if you pay attention here, scales off of attack. So we're looking to push attack as well as a little bit of crit damage, right? Seeker is the next one up here. He's also going to be going at a pretty high speed. He is going to be going at 248 speed with the same aspect, trying to maintain 100% crit rate with a healthy spread of crit damage and attack. And then last but not least, EMIC. We actually did a run with him at level 13. The main thing that we wanted to hit was him being fully ascended, so that you can get the banner, which will input or affect his overall speed range, because the only other place in terms of accessories that you can get speed is accuracy banner, or not accuracy banners, but banners in general. But his stats are going to improve as he levels up his champion, so you're going to see some improvements here. Now, we did struggle to get him, since he is going at 267 speed. You heard that right, 267. It is a little bit harder for his account to be able to maintain that speed while trying to push and inject more damage. So we went to make sure that we at least did enough speed, the main minimum speed requirement, and then we aimed for his primary stat, which was HP, right? So that's where this build went to. And then last but not least, we are using someone that I know some people don't like and some people do like, but we're going to work with him. We are using a 247 247 speed ninja. And this guy is pretty strong. He's known as a boss killer. He was very limited on the type of champions he could use in terms of, when we're talking about Honeycomb here, he was limited on the type of champions that we felt like would be ideal. However, I will go ahead and say this, any DPS, as long as like you're careful with any turn meter manipulation type abilities. Well, I can't say that word. Turn meter manipulation. Trying to get those type of like champions in play could be a little bit of a nuance. Any ones that do that kind of form or get extra turns or something you want to kind of be cautious of. But for the most part, this slot is pretty good for the DPS slot. You can have Relentless and some other factors that will allow you to maybe do some reset type abilities like extra turns and whatnot. This will work just fine. But we do try to be a little careful with it when we're using Ninja since his A1 incorporates turn meter. So just to show you that you can do it with him, you can also do it without him, right? But with that being said, the main aspect that we were going to look for is we're going to try to offset the Helicath so that Emic is going to start off with his unkillable. And then Helicath will open up with his A2 and it'll go into the next rotation. He'll do his A3. And by the time it syncs up, depending on the difficulty, this works from Ultra Nightmare to Brutal territory. So you have those top three top chests you can get. It pretty much tunes up around turn 3 to turn 4, 5, or 6-ish. So around that range of like turns. Pretty early on, for lack of better words. And you're going to see Doom Priest go at the top of the turn, which will allow her to cleanse any debuffs you get, making it affinity friendly. And then Seeker is going to turn meter boost so that we can kind of hit that 2-1 ratio that we're looking for. So with that being said, we're going to get into the run, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Take a breather, kick back, relax, and see it, and then I'll talk about his build afterwards. Now let's talk about the gear that we utilize on the champions and some masteries that you may want to take note of just in case you wanted to replicate this build. I will say one of the things that also was impacted by his damage out efficiency was the fact that some of his champions weren't fully complete. So as you invest more resources into it, whether that's gear or masteries, you're going to see an increase in the damage output. But let's start with Helicath. Helicath, he is running pretty much a tandem of like broken sets, for the lack of better words, with accuracy. So like one of the bigger numbers that he wanted to hit was accuracy. The main thing we wanted to make sure was that he maintained this 246 speed. We were cautious, however, with making sure that if he had like Lore Steel, we would be aware of that. We wanted to avoid Cycle of Magic because we want to have a consistency basis of his, he's getting his skills on cooldown and they're going off cooldown at the appropriate time. So we wanted to avoid like Cycle of Magic, for example, or any type of like ability reset type of cooldown masteries or things of that sort to watch out for, right? But for this particular case, since he already had masteries built into him and he was using like counterattack with Retribution, and you're going against utilizing Emic inside this comp, this actually wasn't bad because you're gonna have like the chance for Retribution pox. You're losing more than 50% of your HP as you start getting upper in the turns. Like I want to say by the time we got into like turn 20ish or 21 to 25ish, you start seeing like our HPs are kind of getting locked down to like 0 basically, or 1 for this case, because we don't die. So Retribution is actually a really good contribution for some extra counterattacks. I will caution like someone that has turn meter manipulation on their A1, like Ninja, for example, would probably want to avoid this so that he doesn't get out of sync. But an alternative approach would be to maybe incorporate something around the lines of accuracy, maybe by going in the support tree. Getting Lore Steel may help out, alleviate some of those. As always, you want to input those masteries inside the calculator and be observant on if the rotation changes. If it shifts too much to a point where you're out of sync, you might want to take that in mind and readjust your speeds accordingly, right? But utilizing like Lore Steel is fine. You just got to play with it in mind, especially if you're using speed sets, right? And of course, we went down the tree to get down towards Wars Master proc so that we can get some more damage out of him. Helicath, he does pretty decent damage, and he counterattacks on his own as long as you got block damage up, right? Ninja, on the other hand, we did avoid some of the similar aspects too with like Cycle of Magic. We want to avoid some offsets from his skills too, because we want to make sure that his A1's going at a specific time frame and not overdoing it. There is some variance in the build that will allow you to use Relentless or those type of masteries that will allow you to cycle into your abilities more often. However, the build does change in terms of some speed variance, and just to avoid that, to make it self-explanatory, keep it simple, keep it simple, stupid. That's how we like to do it. We avoided those particular types of builds, and we went for more of just a damage-oriented style build, right? So he is running one piece of Stone Skin. The rest is all kind of broken up. We did thought about using Relentless. However, this was just slightly better in terms of like stats. And, we were already kind of like focused on a build, and we didn't want to make any changes based off of those speeds we were already looking at. So we went the more simpler route, keep it simple, right? The main thing, though, is that he is fully booked, and that's something to keep in mind. Doom Priest, where she is at right now, she was also using basically a speed set and a crit set. Fully booked, of course. Although this is not mandatory, it does help you out a little bit since you're running an attack-based champion. In tandem with like Seeker, you have a lot of high uptime on your increased attack, so it's good value to have that fully booked. But realistically, her passive is the main thing that makes her viable, right? We are running in Cruelty, so that's somewhere that you could see some extra value in. I didn't do it for the run that we did do, but I would run it. I did make the change after the fact, and I told when I was discussing with him, no masteries whatsoever. So that's something to keep in mind too, where you can see some big improvement in terms of stats. I also did inform him in terms of like something else to look for, since the speeds are not too demanding in terms of like 220 ranges, which we were aiming for here. You could try to get a damage-oriented build within Toxic so you can have more debuff bar. Having that debuff bar a little bit more stimulated would not be a bad thing. Since Doom Priest was a little slower of the speeds of most of the champions there, that'd be the easiest one to facilitate forcing toxic sets into. So that would be an upgrade that I would do from there. Same thing is also true for a Seeker. Seeker could technically do it too as well, since he's not running anything else in terms of mandatory stat requirements. As long as he maintains that 100%, healthy spread, and he maintains that speed, that's all we care about, right? But he's running nothing but broken sets. So there's a lot of room for improvement that we're seeing in terms of like, he's missing out on some set bonuses. I did talk about like in terms of just builds altogether, if you're looking for more damage, when you're looking at unkillable, since you're going to be hitting that 1% threshold where you're at, instead of having 100%, having masteries like Grim Resolve is really good. I didn't change it for him since he wasn't finished with that. I decided not to bother with it for the sake of like, we wanted to kind of pick up the pace with the build process. We didn't do it live. And on top of that too, we wanted to kind of just prioritize getting the concept online for him, and then from there he can do some improvements. But for those of you guys that are looking to build this for the first time, a general rule of thumb is if you're incorporating unkillable at any point in this composition for your team, when it comes to unkillable, the main thing I would look to do is to, look at what your overall health going to be at on a given basis, and you're more likely to be under 100 or 50%, whereas you're not going to be above, you know, or full HP. So like Heart of Glory versus this. Block damage comps typically are Heart of Glory. Unkillable comps are pretty much Grim Resolve in terms of like your damage output. So I would go in that direction, right? So for Seeker, that would be the only change I'd make, but he can go down the deterrence route for extra counterattacks. He could technically also do toxic sets, you know, more damage. Of course, so there's some gear pieces that weren't fully plussed up. All those little contributions will add up to the overall eventual reality that he's going to hit that 1 key territory, right? And then, to add on to it, we also had our homie, the new guy himself, Emic, who is only level 13, mind you. Keep that in mind. Not fully plussed up gear. And, of course, there's always going to be room for improvement. But if we could reach that higher HP threshold while maintaining this speed and getting 100% crit rate with some extra crit damage, that will skyrocket his damage output. Maybe also in a Fury set. That's going to be a set bonus that's going to be very, very valuable for like compositions that include Emic like this one. Or if you want to use Emic in a unkillable with like Maneater, the viability is there. And utilizing sets like Fury, which increases your damage output as your HP reaches that lower threshold, super, super value. So like there's a lot of room for improvement, right? He is fully booked. I do believe that like this particular composition didn't allow for him to utilize his AA2, and we did have to turn that off, so I would be very cautious about that. But overall, the general concept is as long as you can maintain that unkillable route as you're progressing through the fight, you'll be able to keep the damage going with your team, which ultimately will lead you to a much better experience in clan boss. And then of course going faster, you know, enabling that 2-1 ratio with Seeker and the rest of the team going at certain speed ratios, you know, it really does bring you forward. But no masteries, like, you know, you're already approaching that 50 mil higher range potential. At the minimum right now where he's at, he's already at 2 key. By the time he's finished gearing him out and masteries and all that stuff is in play the way we need it to be, you can potentially see this hit like top key very, very quickly. So the sky's the limit with compositions that utilize Emic. I will say if you're using like a block damage comp, so like Batman Forever, Deacon Forever, those type of compositions that involve turn meter manipulators, that A2 may be a little bit of a finicky aspect behind it. I will say, however, if you were to incorporate the unkillable side, like with Maneater, there's some opportunities at play because normally those compositions are engaged with utilizing this particular reset by 1 cooldown in tandem with the rest of your composition, so it's very valuable in that regard, okay? But that'd be the thing I would say to watch out for. If you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, feel free to ask. I definitely appreciate you guys looking into this video. I hope you're enjoying your new Emic if you've acquired him, and if you missed him, well, maybe if you do pull him down the road, you might be able to have some fun with him. I actually had an aside note in terms of what Emic brings to the table, even outside of Clan Boss. I went against I recently hit Live Arena, Gold. I got into Gold. You know, we're not doing too bad. And I went against an Emic who was in place with like someone like that was lockout based, like a warlord, and because his taunt was in play as well as the unkillable, I got stuck to a point where basically I got locked out in a sense where I couldn't do anything but focus on Emic, and Emic was just getting sustained and he was staying alive, and with this shield, it's like I wasn't making any progress, and I actually lost that fight, which was crazy to say. So be on the lookout. Emic might have some viability in the arena side of things too, so I definitely think you guys should just be on the radar. This guy has something to give, and I think you guys should definitely check him out. With that being said, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you want to be a participant in something like this in the future for your account. Exclamation Takeover, or look in the description. It's the Takeover service is there. There'll be a link there for you. And with that being said, always remember, stay ascended.
Got the